What's going on? What's going on? This is Coffee and Chat with Rev Bruce doing something here to make this Black History Month 2021 wrap up sort of tight and complete. We've been going through it. We've been talking about it. And so I want to make sure that you understand. Today we look at faith. We look at faith. We look at Imani, one of the principles, the Nguzo Saba, coming from what many of us associate with Kwanzaa and Dr. Karenga, but this is going back to principles that are applicable within the Black community throughout history as we talk about Black history, and they're also applicable to having a more harmonious society. And so as we wrap up this month, we're looking at it, Imani, faith, which on my cup, faith, right? And we take this in and put this out there so that people will understand what this is all about. And so without further ado, let's just talk about it. Let's just get real and talk about it and take this to another level. This has been the schedule, right? And so you see here, bringing it all the way down to today, the 27th. Imani of Faith, we've covered some things. Kuji Shakalia, Ujima, right? And so now here we go with, faith, to all the beautiful girls with dreads and twists and all that whose mamas named them Imani, God bless you and God be with you. That was something they saw in you, in your spirit before you were even born, that let them lay that name upon you. And so faith has a particular touchy aspect within the Black community. It's strength for many of us. It is the avenue and bastion of support for many of us. And so when we talk about it, what we're talking about today is not a theological deep dive that we would do in seminary or anything of that nature. We're not going into the origins of religion and all of that. We're going into the different aspects of religion and the role it plays within the strength and survival of Black folks throughout history. What were the awakening moments? What were the times of clarity? What were the times of, conflict and confusion? Where are we at today? And so kind of getting into a little bit of this and that. If you get a chance, definitely check out This Is Our Story, This Is Our Song, Henry Louis Gates on PBS. Been some controversy. Here's the thing. There's no book, no story, no movie that captures the single essence of Blackness and Black faith. Roots did a good job, but that was Alex Haley's Roots. You know what I mean? That was a good example for many of us to see, like, okay, this is, over the passage of time, this is what happens with folks in the family and how things begin to disintegrate from their origin into, what we have today. All right. A more diluted idea of what once was, if you don't pass that on, if you don't continue in your own family and your culture of passing it on. And so here we go, man. This is real. I'm just gonna keep it going. Faith, right? We're not simply talking about one faith or religious practice. We're talking about this whole culmination of faith. I'm a Baptist minister, and straight up, that's what I am, right? That's my belief. I'm a Christian, right? But as a community, as a culture, as a people, we have many faiths that have been attached to us and that we have taken on and evolved. And so here it is. This is a culmination of an evolving emergence that has led to so many practices due to various internal and external factors. One of the major external factors of this evolution has been the global diaspora of Africans in the West due to enslavement. That had an impact on where people went, where people came, how people were interacting with each other. You can get back into the idea of trade, right? You don't have the widespread strength of Islam without the practice of trade. You don't have the same thing of Judeo-Christianity without the practice of trade. These trade routes that were travel routes that not only did tradesmen like the Prophet Muhammad travel, but also tradesmen like a tent maker named Paul traveled in his missionary journeys. John Mark traveled many of these routes in his missionary journey, and in fact, look it up and see which one of the disciples was known for spreading the gospel into North Africa and deep into Africa with the Coptic churches and things of that nature. Look at the historic accounts. Check out National Geographic and see who they're talking about when they say this. And then I dare you to check out this diaspora of folks and not see that many of these people who were taken out of Africa were taken into Spanish-speaking countries. And so the influence of language is there, and along with language, the religion of the people who held folks captive also impacted them. And so think about that. That was a period where you have people going into foreign land and leaving their homes and their connections. They didn't line up all the Akan people together on the slave ship. They didn't line up all the Mandinka people together on the slave ship and kept them in comfortable passages of huddled masses, to support one another and speak with one another. They, check out the accounts of slavery and slave ships and how people were carried over here, and you can see where I'm going with this next slide, but that this was not designed for people to carry anything with them into this new land of the West. And so the enslavement of Africans has an impact on the faith of Africans and where they went with that and how they evolved over time. And so as we look at this, check this out. This is one of the deeper ends of it. My man, Dr. Khalid Muhammad, rest in peace. He said it on the Night of the Living Baseheads for Public Enemy, for you all that remember way back when. Have you forgotten that once we were brought here, we were robbed of our names, robbed of our language. We lost our religion, our culture, our God, and many of us, by the way we act, even lost our minds. This was something that stirred many of us up with militant rap through Public Enemy and what was happening in the 80s and early 90s. But it also put us in tune with understanding that there's an essence that happens within this enslavement of people. There's an essence that happens within us as an original people. There's an essence that we seek out this connection. We seek out the strength, which is our faith, which, in Swahili is called Imani. We seek this out because that is what gives us strength. There's a reason why those sorrow songs of the slaves and the identification of the slaves with the children of Israel is because that faith brought about hope of freedom, hope of being emancipated, hope of someday, not gonna feel this way no more. Someday, God's gonna carry me away. Someday I'm gonna steal away. Someday it's going to be different than today. And so this idea that faith was just about sitting around and waiting. Faith was something that still back then in enslavement was still something with an active voice, still within those sorrow songs, still having an active voice where, yes, there was that slave ship called Jesus, and they were waiting for, that old ship of Zion, and they were still, imagining, King Jesus as the captain, as the lyrics evolved. But there was a ship named Jesus. And if you listen to the presentations of those all the way back from Louis Farrakhan to Clarence X13, you will see that there are those indications of that slave ship Jesus, right? Where people still said, if that ship would just come back, I could make it home. You can see that also in what Dr. Gates presents. And I think that that's important that we recall and understand that with what Dr. Gates is presenting, he is presenting a whole nother aspect of it, and the idea of the church being a cornerstone within the community. And I'm just saying, go along with that, faith itself is a cornerstone with the community. We have a variety of faiths that people have attached to throughout history, and so I'll just name a few right here. And when we think about it, think about where people are going with their faith. Think about where people are with their faith, and how people have been led to believe, what they have is right, and that's what the issue is. You can't I want to say this as a minister. I want to say this as a man of God. I want to say this as a believer. Every environment is an environment for you to evangelize. Some environments are for you to learn. Sometimes you have to sit at the feet of someone and gain an understanding of what is being taught and what is being shared. And you bring your beliefs into that environment, and then hopefully out of that environment and that interaction, you are able to understand greater what you believe in relationship to what others believe. Your religious experience is your personal experience. You may share some same tenets with people that you're in congregation with. You may share some things with some people that you're in community with, but yours is yours. That's the dichotomy of our faith, is that our faith is not only personal, but it's also a connective faith. And so we connect with other people through faith. Whether you are a Rastafarian or you are practicing Black Hebrew Israelite, it's about that. Whether you're a 5%er or you are practicing one of the West African religions, or Catholicism, it's there, right? And so those things are part of not only the strength of Africans and African Americans, but they're also at the root of how many of us have been able to stay connected with each other throughout all these years. It's not simply what some folks say, the Black church. It's more than the Black church, right? Think about it. With Marcus Garvey was able to do marvelous things in the early 1900s with those who were practicing multiple types of religion. You had the black Muslims who were starting out. You had the Rastafarians, which were part of Garvey's own homegrown folks, and then you had the Christians. And so just those three groups, amazing work that Garvey was able to do and convince people in the idea of black empowerment to move towards a unified view of black prosperity throughout the world. And so this is still Black History Month. I'm saying it right. And I'm saying it to those that would counter with well, it should only be promoting Christianity, or we should only be promoting, our faith and our doctrine and everything. God bless you. You know what I mean? But as a whole, this is the history of a people beyond just this idea of, my faith says. And I say that, like I said, believe what you believe and understand what you believe, right? Understanding your beliefs, like I said, you bring your beliefs to the table, right? You bring your principles, you bring your understandings, you bring that to the table, but you also bring forth, who you are, what makes you who you are, how you behave, how you respond, and belief should be a predecessor or a predictor of behavior. And so if you believe in Islam, peace, you believe in that, then that's what you should be bringing to the table when you sit with Rastafarians and Catholics and others. So if you believe in Judaism, and what God has ordained and how God has ordained it, and your relationship with him, and you put that forth, and your greeting is shalom, understand that you are bridging a gap with someone from Islam when you say shalom, because their greeting of salam, both of you are saying the same thing, of peace. And so bring that to the table, bring what you believe to the table, and let that help you strengthen your beliefs and your understanding. Your understanding is also being, one who can empathize with someone else. One-sided, you're short-sighted. And so be careful with that. And so know what you believe, understand what you believe, and, also, I'm gonna say it like this. It's true that your faith, right, is about your personal strength, but it's also understanding that as a people, faith had to come in many different forms for us as a people. And so I can say that as a Christian minister and understand that and not be offended by it. God help us. Some people are offended by it because other religions even exist, other faiths even exist, but that's unrealistic to say that other faiths would not exist. And, let me break this down. I said I wasn't going to do a whole theology class of it, but if you check out Rastafarianism, and the Rastafarian doctrine, it's a derivative of Judeo-Christianity, right? If you check out Catholicism, that's what it is. It's a derivative of Judeo-Christianity. And Islam they're talking about Moses, they're talking about Abraham, they're talking about Adam. How many more similarities are there than, except for in the concept of Christianity, right? Where Jesus, right? Jesus is the deciding factor for us, right? And so, in the role of Jesus, but Jesus still plays a role in all of these other religions if you hear what they have to say. Just understand what you believe and truthfully know what you believe, right? And so let me let that go right there. But understand that there are multiple faiths that have been evolved and emerged within our time span, particularly following enslavement. And so those slaves that were in the Caribbean and other areas, the emergence of, Rastafari, those that were touched by Catholicism, not only did they become Catholic, but some evolved into santeria, which has other practices that include voodoo and what some call hoodoo. And so let's imagine that's still connected to our people and our people's faith, that our people have that inner strength to have that connectiveness to carry on. Understand, enslavement was hell. Enslavement was living hell, and they needed that faith to carry on. And so understand the history of it, understand the culture of it. That's also the problem when we get into studying and understanding not just faith, but also how things transpire over time with history. We lose sight because we don't take into account all of these other things that had to evolve, that were emerging and on the scene, and were also key factors in the practice. Here we go. The idea that Christianity is some white man's religion. It comes back to, when we get into it, faith has been used by a lot of people for good and bad. I love how Paul put it when he said some practice, some preach out of this, out of a good heart. Some preach out of greed. Some preach this way. All I can say is that the gospel has been preached. But Booker T. Washington said it this way: when you meet an American Negro who's not a Methodist or a Baptist, some white man's been tampering with his religion. That was his belief back then. Carter G. Woodson talked about, the miseducation of the Negro. Dr. Carter G. Woodson put it like this. He said, the highly educated Negroes have turned away from the people in the churches, and the gap between the masses and the talented tenth is rapidly widening. He was saying that's not about white folks. That's about us, segmenting ourselves. And so too many people, right, when we talk about it, are talking about church as opposed to faith. Church as opposed to faith. And there's a difference between church and faith. There's a difference between the things we do regularly as a church and the things we do in practicing our faith, the things we're supposed to exude, right? And I believe Malcolm X said it best: I'm for truth no matter who tells it. And when we talk about truth and we speak from the point of truth, then we're able to get beyond some of the hangups. Countless cities, countless inner cities, urban and some suburban cities have interfaith networks where the Catholics, the Lutherans, the Christians, the Jews, and others are working together to attack poverty, attack hunger, attack things of that nature. But we've got to understand, right, that these interfaith networks are not trying to evangelize and proselytize each other. They're trying to work together, seeking unity of a common good. And that common good is based upon what they bring to the table, like I said. And so, get out of the hang up of, believing that what you have has always been. In fact, I'm gonna bust somebody's bubble right now. Half of what people are calling church today is not even what was biblically intended, and it's not even being practiced in the manner that God intended. And so here we are, we're talking about believing and supporting the church, and a lot of times we're not doing the work of the church, we're just doing worship, right? We're having a good old time with the celebration of the faith, right? But we're not in the midst of the ministry of the faith and the work. I say that as as a Baptist. I say that as a Christian. Here we are. We got that thing down. We got that A and B selection down. We got that praise and worship down. We've got that how to call for an offering down. But do we really have the connection with one another to where we know that there is pain, as it was said, by a Christian sister once, that we know and understand the pain in the pews? Do we even understand that? And can we go beyond that to where we're so connected within our faith, right, that people outside of our faith turn and say, man, I really want to join in with them because they are of one accord. They are together. They are like-minded. They are as one man and one voice. And a lot of times that's not the case, because what we have is division. What we have is schism. Somebody says we should be speaking in tongues over here. Somebody says the spirit should be manifested in something else over here. And someone behind me says, well, we could really get to the spirit if we took out them instruments and we just went without them tambourines and all that other noise making in the church. This stuff has very little to do with faith. It has very little to do with faith and the actual works of faith and the things that connect people as a community, but we get caught up in it. And so, boom, throughout history, these are the folks that have, and the icons that have technically been part of what we've seen as the faith of the Black community. And so what we have here is up top, we have Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, famous for establishing the AME denomination. Richard Allen was a Methodist, itinerant Methodist preacher who, long before the AME was even established, was traveling to different enslaved folks in their plantations and sharing the gospel, him and his brothers, and took that to another level. And he worked on founding, you've heard me say it before, the Free African Society in Philadelphia. He worked on setting up a circuit of chimney sweeps as jobs that African Americans can do. Definitely check out some of the literature on Richard Allen and what he was able to do in speaking out against slavery and racism and working together with other societies that dealt with Black uplift and protection of people. And so when you look at Richard Allen being the first, I believe he was the first bishop of the AME Church. AME Church was established in 1816. But he also was partnered with Absalom Jones, who's over here to the far right. Absalom Jones was the first Black Episcopal priest in the United States, and that's where they differed a little bit. Allen was a staunch Methodist, and Jones, coming from an Episcopal background, they couldn't really get that affiliation down. And so the combination of being African Methodist Episcopal is where we see the AME's birth. And so this denomination in this church of Bethel, AME in Philadelphia, was based upon a racist act that, individuals were assaulted at the St. George Methodist Church in Philadelphia in 1787. They were assaulted when they were trying to worship equally with white Methodists. And this was, here we go from our church folks. One of them ushers got involved and got in a tussle with them, and Absalom Jones, Richard Allen, and two others walked out. And this was about the whites' refusal to grant blacks equal rights within worship. How does that sound? Equal rights within worship. And so this is how just within the United States, right, that African-American denomination was founded, right? And you have here the Black Hebrews. The Black Hebrews were a group of individuals that still are practicing today. Then you see the brother carrying the scrolls, and that's a practice derived from Judaism, to where they still adhere to the practices of the original Israelites and Hebrews and that lineage. And that's part of Black faith throughout the history, that individuals who have long identified with the Lion of Judah, the tribes of Israel, and their torment and tribulation, and the idea that God someday will send a savior, a Messiah. That's part of Black faith when we look at that over time. And then we have here to the right the sisters of the NOI, the Nation of Islam. Imagine that, the orderliness of what was able to come out of what Fard shared with Muhammad, and what Muhammad made and evolved and managed to create, also with the help of Malcolm X and others, to where here the nation of Islam is still a strong organization, still a strong faith base for a lot of people. And split from that, Clarence X13, right? Clarence X13, God bless, with the idea of, mathematics and all these concepts of so much numeric symbolism that people get lost in it, and the knowledge and understanding, the wisdom and all that, taken to the streets, infiltrated into hip hop, and dispersed throughout the world globally. That, this whole idea of 5% nations is a concept that many people fail to recognize. This it's derived from one of the teachings within the Nation of Islam, but many people fail to recognize that here it is, what the 5%ers are talking about with the poor righteous teachers and these other aspects of torment and oppression that Black folks undergo, are part of the religious pathway for the people who are on the right path. And that's why there are 5% who are the true believers and the poor righteous teachers, and you have 10% who know and understand the truth, but they work deceptively to hide the truth. But there are 85% who do not know and who live in darkness, who are manipulated and orchestrated by the 10% against the 5%, and they seek to kill the prophets. That's what it is in a nutshell. And these two figures right here, Bob Marley and Haile Selassie, the idea and icons, the images of Rastafari, that they are recognized in the practice of Rastafari as, iconic symbols of that faith, and that Bob Marley was a voice for that faith, and in his practice, and talking about the connection of oppression in Jamaica being much like Babylon, right? When we talk about Babylon and the raiders from the north infiltrating and taking over the people and taking God's people captive, and how they were mistreated. And so Bob Marley as the voice of that, and Haile Selassie, king of Ethiopia, with his victory over invaders from the north, right? With the Italians and those that were part of the world domination that they sought to take over. They couldn't beat Haile Selassie, and Haile Selassie and his army, he was viewed in a sense as the Lion of Judah, this almighty person that was able to muster strength and withstand and take that faith to fend off the attackers with the help of God. And so that's part of what they look at when they talk about it in the idea of Rastafarianism. When you hear it said that there is Marley, there is Marcus, there is Malcolm, and there is Martin, and all these things are part of the idea of these voices that are iconic in the belief of Rastafari. And there's different other things as far as, vows of poverty. And, we get into the whole idea of what are dreadlocks, and how does that combine with the Nazarene belief that comes out of Judaism. And so a lot of this has overlap. A lot of this has intersection. And this is part of where we get this whole big idea of what is Black faith. And Black faith is the thing that's kept us going on. Black faith is the thing that's been here before many of us, and that will continue as many of us, pass on. Black faith is that thing that so many people have not been able to put their finger on, but, they know it's something. They know it's, as the song said, it's something inside so strong. There is a power, there is a belief, there's a spirit, and when we talk about it, you just can't even sit there and say it's unbelievable. It is something that we have utilized to our advantage to stay together and stay strong, right? And stay strong throughout periods of time where if it was marching for peace and equality and saying ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, or if it was standing up and and fighting and holding our ground and saying, this is who we are, recognize us as people. It's that faith that still has allowed people to not only march and demonstrate, but also have allowed people to speak out and voice against oppression and suppression and all of these different things that have held people back and have fought against people. It is that inner strength that has allowed Nat Turner to go from preaching to revolution. It's that inner strength that has allowed Denmark Vesey to go from, just teaching the Bible to putting faith in action and trying to liberate his people. This is not just something that people take casually, right? Faith is that inner strength, and what people may call it, how people may tap into it, may appear different, but it is the same thing when we talk about it in the sense of our Black history. Does it manifest in the same places and spaces? No, they're different. You're not gonna do in a Islamic mosque what you would do in the midst of a Catholic service. They're different. That's not going to happen. You're not going to perform Rastafarian rituals in the midst of a Jewish synagogue. That's not going to happen. That's not allowed. That's in fact, that's not even from one faith to another. That's not even being respectful, right? And so as we move forward and we talk about observances, as we talk about being at peace with one another, as we talk about, supporting and expanding this agenda for, global peace, this agenda for fighting injustice, this agenda for being at one, in community, we've got to understand that our religious differences don't mean that we can't have common ground with where we want this country to go and this world to go. That's real. And so let's be real about that, and let's be honest about that. This is only part of the story. This is only part of the history, but it is the faith, the part that keeps so many of us going and so many of us connected. It creates community for some of us, and it creates confidence for others of us, that on a collective level, we are connected as a community by our faith, right? And on an individual level, I'm connected to my God by my faith. Someone else is connected, to Allah. Someone else is connected to Yahweh. Someone else is connected to the saints, and someone else is connected in a whole other way. But faith is that which is both individual and collective. And if we keep that in mind, we'll be doing great. We'll be doing great. And I just want to say, it's definitely a time to look at what has faith produced in us. Look at what has faith produced in us and see how much, this has really taken us to another level, another place. And how much further can we go? How much more can we build? How much more unity can we practice? How much more can we exhibit in our lives to where we touch people, and we touch people by living out our agenda and demonstrating the peace we want people to have, the love we want people to have, the strength we want people to see, and being there and being an example. Are we ready to do that, and do that with our faith? And so this is Coffee and Chat with Rev Bruce. God bless. We just touched a little bit on this, but there are so many other resources, so much other information you can get. Trust and believe. This is just part of it. Have a good one.